The Morristown Green, a central park echoing with the footfalls of Washington and his compatriots during the Revolutionary War, is not merely a serene escape, but a living testament to the town's pivotal role in shaping our nation. Morristown's history seamlessly intertwines with every individual who grew up there, creating a childhood rich in the echoes of the past and a vibrant spirit of community carried forward by each successive generation. These are their stories. This is Beyond the Green.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our premiere episode of Beyond the Green. So let us initially break down exactly what is Beyond the Green. Well, a few months ago, I had this idea. Since there's on Facebook specifically, there's so many groups that are committed to telling the story of Morristown and the people of Morristown, either today and of yesterday. And since so many of its residents, prior residents, have moved away, but it seems like these pages are bringing people back again, whether they're talking about their favorite teachers, if they went to school at Morristown or Del Barton, or their favorite restaurants in town. So what we decided to do is kind of bring those people all together, put them in one place, and have an open discussion about their memories in Morristown and how that curated their current lives. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Jim Berkman. He is a fellow Morristown High School alumni, class of 87. Thanks for coming, Jim.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Terry. This is great. Grew up in Morristown, and even though I've moved a lot of different places since then, currently I live in Northern California and Silicon Valley, I still consider Morristown and New Jersey home. So, thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks for being here.
So I'll start by saying, did you just hate the bagels in New Jersey and you moved to California, or was that some other reason that you moved?
That's right. The bagels and the pizza just were not good enough, so I had to come out to California. I love California. You know, it's 62 degrees out right now, sunny. But yeah, it's great food, but they cannot figure out pizza or bagels or hard rolls. Any bread product is pretty sad. Matter of fact, Pixar. There's a great scene in Pixar, which they're headquartered here in the Bay Area. They in the movie Inside Out. This is the one with the little girl's emotions, and they move across the country from, I guess, New York to California to the Bay Area, and the kid's upset, misses her friends and all that. The mom's like, "Hey, let's go get pizza," and because that's one of the things they like to do back home. And they get there, and she's like, "Mom, they even ruined pizza," because they had pizza with broccoli on it. So yeah, even Pixar is in on the sad joke.
Unbelievable. So let's lay down a little more foundation. So you grew up in and around Morristown, right? Whereabouts?
Yeah, so I actually lived in two parts of town. I grew up. I actually don't remember what direction it is, but up Sussex, almost to Randolph, like right close to Mount Freedom. Bradford Estates was up there, and so I grew up there from third grade through ninth grade. And ninth grade, I moved to Convent Station.
Got it. Yeah, I know what that is. Our pediatrician growing up was on Rayner Road, which I think was right before, off of Sussex, right before you got to Bradford, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So then, prior to Morristown High School, what did you and I meet? Did you go to Frelinghuysen with me? Because I'm an old man now. I don't remember.
We went to Frelinghuysen, but we got to know each other, of course, because our lockers at MHS were side by side for all 4 years. So we were
exactly.
we were locker mates.
That's right.
Yeah, we actually didn't have that many classes together, I don't think, but we filled in all the blanks in between. So
yeah, exactly. It was excuse me. It was interesting. Um, Now, when I think about it in hindsight, I was telling I was telling Peter how when I talk to people now that have gone to different high schools around the country, it's amazing to me how large not only the overall population of Morristown High School was and still is, I assume, how big are graduating classes. I mean, I've spoken to people who went to school in Midwest that had like 70 people in the graduating class.
Yeah.
But I think we talk about, as was mentioned in the beginning of the episode, we talk about kind of the upbringing and how that affected our lives. I think being exposed to a school of that size with that type of diversity, even though depending on which group you were a part of or which clique, it may have been more difficult than others. You realize in hindsight what kind of an upper hand it gave you, and then what
Hmm.
relationships have been created. I mean, do you kind of see? I'm just curious. Do you kind of see it the same way? Um, now also living as I do, I live in Arizona, living in a different state. And I know when people ask me, what do you miss about living in New Jersey? Aside from the food, one of the things I say is attitude, but I don't mean attitude the way most people say it. There's a candidness that you learn to appreciate after the fact because you don't realize it growing up. I'm just curious what your perspective is on that for your life.
Sure. A lot to unpack there. Yeah, growing up, so my family moved to town, I guess in '77, and so it was what about 5 years after. I was about 5 years after the famous riots from back in the day,
Hmm.
um, and and uh, I think Morristown and the Morris school system, whatever the official name is, they really did a good job because there still was a lot of race tension,
Hmm.
in the early '70s, and they did a really good job, I think, of reacting and moving beyond that.
Hmm.
It was that is one of the things that I miss about New Jersey and living there is the diversity, and there's in the Bay Area where I live now, there's a ton of diversity, but it's very different. My wife, who's native Californian, um, like she was a little surprised as I'm describing the diversity, and she was like blown away that there were different flavors of white people. You know, um, there's Italian and Irish and Greek and yada 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 and Jewish and all of those in California have somehow been homogenized to you're just white. Now, if you're Asian here, you, there's every flavor of Asian community here in the Bay Area. Amazing food, but yeah, there's pretty much just white when you're a white person here. Um, the other thing, or well, another thing I realized was just how good the ocean and the beaches, or the shore as we called it, was. Uh, the Beach Boys, California Girl, all of that. The beach culture. Um, it's cold as hell. The Pacific Ocean is freezing. You you don't want to get in like maybe at the height of the warmest day in the summer, maybe you would, but like you need a wetsuit almost any time, and a lot of times you need a dry suit. I didn't even know there were things called dry suits, um, because it's literally that cold. Oh man,
That's
we
that's
have a
why.
visitor here. This is Buddy.
Buddy, love it.
Jim, that's the reason why Fonzie wore his leather jacket when he jumped the shark at the Santa Monica Pier. Just my
Absolutely,
Right.
fun
absolutely.
That's right.
fact.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, but yeah, and just to your other point, Terry, the diversity or the attitude, the directness is something that's something I think I struggle with, in business and such relationships because it's not that I don't care. I want to cut through the BS. I don't have time for the BS. It's like, okay, if there's a problem, let's get it on the table. Let's figure it out. Let's move on, and be done with it. Not tiptoe around and be super cryptic. Like I don't want any of that. I just like if there's an issue, let's get it on the table and deal with it.
yeah. The other dynamic that I'm curious about, and again, we talk about it. Um, just well, certainly when you're from New Jersey, but when you're, from Morristown, it has a bigger effect. Is the same thing that we see that we talk about on the other podcast, Baklava and Banter. By the way, shameless promotion if you haven't heard it, it's on YouTube. Where we talk about Greeks running into other Greeks. You run into somebody, initially you can't really tell. Something is said, and then somebody inevitably asks the question, "Are you Greek?" And you go, "Yeah." "Do you speak Greek?" "Yeah." And then the world opens up. You become, the Hawaiians talk about being part of the Ohana, part of the family, somebody you've never met before. It's like you've known them for 30 years. I feel the same way now, living outside of New Jersey. When I meet somebody, I was talking to a Gartner analyst yesterday, and we're talking about where are you from. He lived in North Carolina, and I said, before we were waiting for some other people to join the call, and they said, "Where are you?" I said, "I live in Tucson, Arizona." I said, "But if you can't tell from my accent, I'm from the East Coast." He goes, "Oh yeah, I could tell." He goes, "Whereabouts?" I go, I grew up outside of New York City in northern New Jersey." He goes, "Whereabouts?" And you go, I grew up in Morristown. He goes, "Oh, I was in Hillsdale."
Nice.
Right? Or no, I'm sorry, not Hillsdale, Hillsborough, outside of Princeton. And so that
Yeah.
started a conversation where he worked for AT&T. He worked for Bell Labs in Homedale. And before
Yeah.
we even chatted, first time I had spoken to this analyst, I think we wasted, and you only get half an hour slots initially. I think we wasted 15 minutes just comparing notes. And then to make it even funnier, his daughter lives here, probably 5 miles north of me.
Oh,
So the
nice.
point I'm trying to make is, if you take that and then you meet somebody who is more directly from northern New Jersey, or certainly from not necessarily even Morristown, but in that general vicinity, all of a sudden it becomes like
Yeah.
fraternity, sorority, brothers and sisters. And I think that's the vibe you get on. I don't spend a lot of time in on Facebook, but when I do go in there and I see some of these groups that have been set up, 30 years could have gone by, or the last reunion I went to, what was it, 30 years, I think, that we went, Jim? And you
Yeah.
meet people that you may not have spoken to at all when we were in high school for various reasons, who are like, "Hey, where you been?" Do
Yeah.
do you have you ever had that same situation living outside of New Jersey, to run into somebody in Northern California and you're talking and you go, "Oh man, your dad worked for AT&T? I had somebody working for AT&T." One of those.
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely an extra level of camaraderie uh, there for people in the club. Um, who the ones who know that it's Taylor ham, not pork roll. Um, had to slip that one in, but yeah, there definitely is a sense of understanding each other when you run into somebody, and I'd say that 15 minutes you wasted with the Gartner analyst definitely wasn't wasted.
Yeah, no,
That's
yeah, that was a great relationship. I just thought it was, you
you
don't
can't buy
often.
you can't buy that extra 15 minutes, but
Yeah, I always know when you mention to somebody initially where you're from, and you start very broadly and you say New Jersey, and then they want to know where from. You start, and then you'll go, Northern Jersey, where from? Morris
yeah,
County, whereabouts? Then you start
yeah,
getting into some
Mhm.
conversations.
yeah,
How
exactly.
do you get back to New Jersey or Morristown often?
I get back to New Jersey every couple years. my brother lived there. He actually passed away this past year, but his family, his wife and kids are still there. So yeah, try and get out there every couple of years. Um,
So
Morristown. I make sure I pass through there, but I haven't gone to visit in Morristown too much in the last 10 years, unfortunately.
yeah, the reason I ask, and there's two schools of thought, is that, and we were talking about it before we started recording today. The building and the transformation of the Morristown that we knew growing up to now is beyond night and day. There's one camp, and I think I'm in it, that kind of looks at it from a nostalgic perspective and go, it's so different. I mean, the green is still there, and you still know how to get around. The streets necessarily haven't changed, but it's like a mini New York City. I mean, it was always, I think, called a
Well,
mini Hoboken, right? Now you expect growth. There's the other
Well,
camp that basically says
hold
the
on,
more the
hold on.
better.
When we grew up there, Morristown and Hoboken were completely different. Hoboken was that's where you stepped over the homeless people, who were asleep on the inside the path area.
Right.
Only after gentrification did Hoboken turn nice enough to be called like Morristown.
Yeah, true. What were you were gonna say, Peter?
uh, you know, the funny thing is, because I'm there, I drive by more times than not just to see what's going on, and but in retrospect, when you look back, even 10 years after, let's say, you guys graduated, or less, within a decade after all of us graduated, the changes that happens first, I think the biggest change was when New Jersey Transit, when the Secaucus Junction was created, which is now the train station Secaucus Junction, which gave the Midtown Express started, the Midtown Direct. So before, to go to Manhattan, you had to switch trains in Summit, even to go to like Hoboken and stuff. Like now, 96, 97, you had these trains now nonstop to Manhattan. And I think that's what really, really opened up the Morristown community to say, hey, you know what? I don't have to take a bus anymore. I can live 40 miles away, but I can be in work within an hour. And I think within that 25, 27 years since that's happened, you basically have seen the city explode, or the going from a town to a small city. Very much, living in Bergen County now for the last a dozen years, Morristown now always gets compared to Ridgewood,
Really?
because a lot of people in the finance district live in Ridgewood, and um, you see that, and you're like, it's still not Ridgewood. Morristown is Morristown will always be Morristown. The thing, and the thing I want eventually to kind of, even though we're talking about the people that used to live in Morristown, and one thing we want to do with the show is perhaps drill down more on the history of it. What Ridgewood doesn't have, it doesn't have your Alexander Hamiltons. It doesn't have your George Washingtons. We were the military capital of the Revolution. I think at
The
the end of
harshest
the
winter that the Revolutionary Army
yeah,
had spent wasn't Valley Forge.
no, it
It was
wasn't.
Marston.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, Ridgewood doesn't have a Patriot's Path. You know, when you think about communications, we had Alfred Vail. Hell, him and Samuel Morse created, literally in Speedwell Village, created the communication that would come to be the epicenter of communication through the 1800s. And it's
Mhm.
just when you sit back and you think about
Thomas
it,
Nast.
exactly,
Uh, you
exactly.
Santa Claus was, the modern Santa Claus was created in Morristown.
Right. And when you think about things like this, like I always say, we always take things that are in our backyard for granted, like the Statue of Liberty and all that. It's in our backyard, but people will
In New Jersey, by
say,
the way.
Exactly. And people will say for years, this is my thing, is it blows my mind that somebody from Europe or any other continent will say for years just to spend 2 weeks in New York City. And here it is in our backyard, and we totally take it for granted. And I think for a lot of us, we took that history for granted, and it's for me. I remember the days when in Morristown, the municipality was in the Vale Mansion there, and then eventually a few years ago they moved over to across the street where King's is, to a building that is somewhat reminiscent of the Independence Hall. And I think that is well deserved to kind of preserve the history that we are, in no small terms, are part of. Those people who came before us and those who are going to come after us. We've got this common thread of living in Morristown and being able to be part of that. And I think and I think that's when you guys were talking about earlier about you know what do you miss the most. And I think everybody, and that's the one thing that brings those Facebook pages together, is that common thread that runs through it. And it's like, we like, you hear talk about people, oh, we went to Burnham Park Pool, or you went to Streeter Pool, and stuff like that, and the times how you spent your summers, and going off campus while you're in high school. God, like, all of our photos should be hanging in Suvio's right now, because my God, like, we kept that place alive for generations to come. And I don't agree with Dave Partnoy, who kind of gave poo-pooed it. Screw you, Dave. That's what I have to say. Suvio's is Suvio's, and it's good pizza. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
digress.
it's funny. One of the things I see on Facebook, because Facebook, just to throw this in, Facebook was very important for reconnecting, because I moved away actually 2 weeks after graduation.
Mhm.
I won't get into that, but um, our 20th anniversary was right after Facebook kind of got opened up to old people. Before it was just for
Okay.
college kids, and and um, and
Okay, I see
so
what
the
you're saying. Yeah.
20th anniversary saw people that I hadn't seen literally in 20 years, and we connected on Facebook right afterwards. And so I'm connected with probably 500 or 600 people from Morristown, um, and Suvio's. Getting back to that rabbit trail, the uh, whenever I see anybody who has left the area and is back in Morristown visiting, they're like, oh, stop by Suvio. There'll be a picture of Suvio's or the slice, or just mention of it. And absolutely, everybody who returns for a visit stops at Suvio's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the thing that obviously you don't realize. I remember at one point realizing when I moved out of New Jersey, lived up in outside of Boston for a while, then lived in Rhode Island and then Arizona. I started calling it, didn't realize growing up in the bubble, because when you leave the bubble, and then the things that kind of annoy me now, like one of the things about I love Tucson. To your point about Northern California, yeah, it does can get to be over 100 degrees and so forth. But as much as people want to joke about the dry heat, no humidity, when you come from a state where because of humidity, it'll exceed the temperature of even Tucson sometimes, you appreciate not having humidity at least. But the point I'm trying to make is, you've got Morristown, Madison, Chatham, and you go anywhere in New Jersey. It's all a series of villages that
Mhm.
Yeah.
became towns and small cities. And so the joke I made one time, so living in Tucson or Arizona in general, even in Phoenix, you don't really have centers of town. You have the downtown, the city, and then you have strip malls, right? And
Right.
so the town north of me has a sign when you go by it. It says "Welcome to." It's actually Oro Valley, I believe. It says "Welcome to Oro Valley," founded in 1974.
Mhm.
And I remember telling somebody, 1974. Where we grew up, towns are founded in 1674. right?
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to, and then the other thing that, of course, bothers me is, and again, it's become stereotypical. People, oh, you're from Jersey, that sort of thing. And I always like to say, did you actually leave the airport? Which now, if you haven't been, Jim, to the new Terminal A in Newark,
Mhm.
fantastic. That's a whole different show. But it's like
Nice.
you're in a European terminal. So that's
Yeah.
even no longer, and they're still continuing to work on it. But the point I'm trying to make is so once I kind of realized that and really dug into the history, there's actually a book. You could probably find it in reference if you go to Morristown Library. You could probably find it online. I have a signed copy. It's called Morristown's Forgotten Past, The Gilded Age. And the authors, it's a father son, is John W. Ray and John W. Ray Jr. And basically, it talks about, I have a copy of it right here, the story of a New York town once a society center for the nation's millionaires, 1890 to 1929. Those same
Wow.
people that had mansions on the water in Newport, Rhode Island,
Yeah.
guess where they were? Because they worked in New York City, and they had
Yeah.
their own Pullman car, which is
Yep.
the line that runs all the way through behind, Rods and Madison Hotel. And
Yep.
they built their other estates right in front of the rail line.
Yeah.
And it was back in the day when you only had, you had several hundred millionaires, where there was actually a registry. And if you
Yeah.
go through that book and you read through some of that stuff, it blows your mind and makes me appreciate how much, kind of unbeknownst to us when you're younger, I guess, how much you did grow up in such a societal center, like you said, the center of the founding of the nation, and how much history there is and continues to be. And again, that's why we talk about on this podcast. We'd love to get historians and others from Acorn Hall and so forth to talk about this, because I really think it needs to be talked about more. Maybe not everybody appreciates it, but it
Right.
isn't just another town in another state, a
Mhm.
stereotypical state that's like, oh, you talk
Right.
like this or you argue about some pork roll
Yeah,
thing. There's a lot behind that.
yeah, and
Right.
I
Right.
think for us, Jim, we for the two of us, we kind of look at things at a little bit different lens because our parents immigrated to this country and they moved to Morristown. They lived on Phoenix Avenue, right across from, where Colonial Liquors was there on Early Street and Washington Street there. And, you know, for me, like my brother was born abroad, but in my family, I'm first generation American. I'm literally the first one born in this country. And the funny thing about that is I was born on Flags Day. And
Oh, nice.
every year for my birthday, they put the flags around the green. And
Yeah.
every time I'd go around, I'd ask my mother, why are the flags on? She'd tell me because it was my birthday.
Nice.
So there was a sense of Americana there that, that I think me personally, I value that this growing up kind of embodied that American dream in a way, I don't want to, I can go on this for hours, but I'm not going to, but that's why I just think like, uh, our dreams were, we kind of had that immigrant American dream mentality growing up. There's a friend of mine. I'm gonna should I name drop here? I'm gonna say it. There's a guy I went to high school with. His name is Sean Delbini, one of the biggest Jets fans you're ever gonna meet. Okay, he just posted something
Okay.
on Facebook. He was somewhere. He went and he got all this memorabilia to the Jets. Loves the Jets, and you know what? And I love his enthusiasm. I remember I was in high school. He was. You remember the old Baskin Robbins across from Fitzgerald's there?
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about? Right past the Hart Street there.
Yeah.
I remember him saying, "Oh, I worked here. You should come work." And I'm like, I can't. Like, my mother wouldn't. My mother's mentality was this. It's not that I didn't want to go work there. My mother said, "We didn't come to this country for you to work. We
Right.
came here for you to be educated, so that you can have more than we could have." And that's kind of like people will say, like, "Well, may consider us spoiled." We weren't spoiled by no means because we weren't rich. we were just, growing up. It wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s when my mother started her own business. We were lower middle class at best, and it for us was like, it kind of motivated us seeing people have things that we were eventually going to be at the upper echelons and work hard to get what everything else got in life. So it's just a different perspective that at least I look life through and growing up in Morristown, and how I'm grateful to have that diversity. I'm grateful to have people that, unbeknownst to them, motivated me. I had somebody tell me once. Now remember, we grew up bilingual. I remember, I'm not going to tell you who the person was because you went to school with their brother, but I was Sussex Avenue School. This has had to be 82. I had a teacher there. Her name was Mrs. Litsky. Okay. There was a kid in class who said to me, "Why don't you learn how to speak English?" Now, I spoke English just fine, but we spoke with a little bit of an accent. Okay.
Right.
That's in the past. I'm not trying to, but you don't think that didn't motivate me? Hell yeah, it motivated me. Like, hello bitches, here I am. Now again, I got to calm it down a little bit. People, get people upset, but stuff like that kind of motivated me through life. But yeah, I am just grateful for the opportunity to love this community. Is Was tremendously influential to where I am today.
Sure.
And I'm extremely grateful for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
So
I mean, you make some great points there. The the Federalist Papers, written
mhm,
by Alexander Hamilton. And I went to Alexander Hamilton grade school. They didn't teach us a lot of the actual history, strangely enough, but it was Federalist Papers were written in Morristown,
mhm,
most of them, and we're in the shadow almost of the Statue of Liberty, and so
mhm,
for me, um, immigration just like I personally am dumbfounded by the current anti-immigration stuff because that's what makes this country great. We are a melting pot, and
mhm,
you need more than one ingredient to have a melting pot. And I grew up, with friends who were Greek and Puerto Rican and um, just the whole diaspora across the world that came to the U.S. And so, yeah, I think that's something I see in other parts of the country that's missing is that love for those other cultures,
mhm,
the mixing of those.
what do you think? One of the things that's happened over the years, and you kind of pick some as you talk to people, you look on Facebook. There's a lot of people we went to school with that grew up in and around Morristown as we did, that have moved away in some cases, not necessarily because of jobs or other reasons, but because it's just become more expensive, and so forth. What do you think if you were to take a poll, the people that live there that have moved because of those reasons, not because either they had a different experience and really didn't care for it, but if they had an option, what percentage of people do you think would move back to be in and around Morristown? Do you think that sentiment of the kind of stuff that we're talking about for those that, again, they didn't even necessarily have to go to Morristown High School, by the way, I'm not saying that.
Sure.
But do you think there is a wider group of people than even we see that would say they feel exactly the same way? If given the choice, we'd move back because even though the town has changed in not necessarily good or bad, but has changed, that there's still kind of that vibe, and when you've grown up there, you take it more. It becomes more of your town. I mean, that's if you listen to Bruce Springsteen when he wrote that song, he wrote it with everybody in mind. You listen to that song, and it could be Morristown he's
Right.
talking about. Do you think there
Yeah.
would be the same vibe, or the same sentiment?
I think a lot of people would. Um, it's unfortunately, yeah, it's not the cost that's keeping me away. It's the snow. you
Well,
know,
yeah, that too. I guess I should have
that,
included
that
that
and
information.
I'm a startup guy, and Silicon Valley is the heart of startup culture.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny though when my wife and I talk about would we ever want to move someplace else. The list of places where, well, first of all, the list of places has gotten a lot shorter over the last 10 years, shall we say?
Yeah.
Um, but Morristown is definitely one of the places I would consider moving back to.
Well, Jim, I just want to let you know it was 55 degrees here today.
Okay,
So our winters are become very mild. So, but I think another thing is I think a lot of people would, but I think the even though the weather is an aspect of it, at the end of the day, when you really drill down on it, it's the state taxes. And I
Oh,
think for a lot of people,
property
I think
taxes.
that's the biggest reason why New Jersey in the last 3-4 years has become one of the top three states that they lose. The net loss is higher than the net gain in population,
sure.
because people moving to Florida or Texas or any other state that has zero income tax, and lower property taxes. I think that's what really drives it. But if you take that aspect away from it and you take the weather
Yeah.
out of it as well, I think 70% of the people would definitely move back if they could. I honestly believe that they would. This state has so much to offer, and I was at Newark Airport. This is a few years ago, and I was at the gate, and I hear this guy come down. He's on the phone. He's like, and he had to go. I think he had to go out to Murray Hill, out onto 78 there, where Nokia Bell Labs is. And I hear him talking. He's like, "Hey, I'm in Jersey," and I think he goes, "I gotta tell you something." And I think the flight was I was going to flying to Orange County, and tells this guy on the other end of the phone. He goes, "I gotta tell you something. I drove out west. This is a beautiful state." And I'm like, "You don't say, really?"
Yeah,
You
the
either
Garden
people
State.
who yeah, exactly. People just don't understand. What people don't also understand is outside of Kentucky, New Jersey has the second highest volume of horses in the United States.
Yeah.
I
We
did
have a
not know.
lot of farm.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
your
the
fun fact
U.S.
for the day,
equestrian
Jim.
team is the U.S.
Yeah,
equestrian team is headquartered out in Far Hills, right?
yeah, yeah. But we're pushing back against the clock here. So, Jim, I'm going to ask you our 5 questions that we're going to ask
What,
every interview
what,
here.
one thing I wanted to push back on, and
Okay, go
absolutely
ahead.
agree with you on the taxes, but I
Yeah.
think a lot of people forget that there's a reason that those taxes are collected. New Jersey has one of the, usually it's in the top five in the country school systems. Um,
Well, actually, Jim, it's number 2 right now behind
okay, yeah,
Massachusetts.
yeah. I mean, it's gone
Um,
up and down, but yeah,
yeah.
um, there's a reason. There's services and things like that the government is actually
Hmm.
doing to make our lives better.
Yeah.
So
But it
anyway,
is
just to push back.
no, fair. But I'm also going to say it's only one of the only places on the East Coast you have to pay to get on the beach. But just
Really?
saying,
I
it's
never
not
realized that.
it's not a deal breaker for me, but it's there. Okay. Um, but the funny thing is, if you live in our area, there's so many. When you go to south of Seaside Heights, it's mostly people from Pennsylvania. So when
Yeah.
you go to the Cape Mays, the Wildwoods, it's all
Sure.
Pennsylvania. Everybody from Chester, Chester County, south of Philadelphia. That's
Long
who
Beach
owns all
Island
those.
is mostly New Yorkers
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, but you got to go south of that.
Oh, right, right, right.
Now,
People
now,
understand that.
now, I gotta also interject this. There have been some good changes in New Jersey since I've moved away. Growing up, I remember I was probably, I don't know, 16, and a bunch of friends went down to Asbury Park
Sure.
for the beach, down to the shore for the day, and we were in the water playing, doing all that. And lunchtime, we get out, we're eating lunch up on, getting pizza and
Hmm.
custard and all that up on the boardwalk. And we go to get back in the water, and they had closed the beach because the toxic stuff levels had gone up. You can't tell me that those levels just suddenly spiked while we were out
No.
having lunch. It was so there's been a lot of good cleanup and stuff like that. So
And as a proud New Jerseyan, Jim, I'm gonna blame Staten Island for that. I just have to blame Staten Island. I just have to. But no, the beaches. The beaches up here are beautiful. And you're right. Over the last 20, 25 years, the state EPA and even the federal EPA have done a wonderful job monitoring the waters up and down the coast here. Anything else you
anyway,
want to
my
anything
pleasure.
else you want to push back on before I challenge
No,
you
go
on your
for
5 questions? You sure? I'm good. I'm good. So all right. So just to touch I just want 5 simple questions. So thinking back to your days at MHAS, at Morristown High School, who was your most memorable teacher or teachers? Who do you think kind of most influenced you?
it. I mean, we had so many amazing teachers.
Mm-hmm.
One that comes to mind was Mr. Beaver.
Mm-hmm. Oh
If
yeah.
you
World
remember him,
history.
tall, very, very, very big guy. He
Yeah.
was my
He was the Bob Ross. He was the Bob Ross of MHAs. You know.
right, but yeah, he was the one that drove a motorcycle, looked like he was in a motorcycle gang, and he was first period freshman year for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a scared little freshman, fresh off of Frelinghuysen, and go in, and here's this giant teacher who looks like he could take on Hell's Angels, and but just amazing history teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Another would have to be Wayne Walters.
Mm-hmm.
My love of music and singing
Mm-hmm.
comes directly from that. Um, we had so many amazing teachers. It's really it's hard to narrow it down, but those are two that come to mind.
Great. Um, so outside of Suvio's, when you were around town, what was your most favorite place to eat at?
Uh, this wasn't the favorite, but I do remember back then when we would say, "Hey, let's go get Mexican."
Yeah.
What we meant was, "Let's go to Taco Maker," which was a step down from Taco Bell because they also served hamburgers and French fries. That was the closest authentic Mexican. And Terry, you're in Arizona. I spent 8 years in Arizona, and here in California, we get amazing, amazing Mexican food.
And
Um,
it shocks me that there's a Taco Bell here. I remember that was the first thing thinking when I came to Tucson is why
yeah,
do you need a
yeah,
Taco Bell?
yeah.
But to
Yeah.
each his own.
Well, my dad would have being the AT&T career guy would have made a joke about the Mexican phone company. Um, but let's see. So I remember we would celebrate birthday meals and all that at the library. There was a library, and the
Yeah.
library's second edition after it burned down and rebuilt.
Yeah.
Um, Rod's for brunch was always amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lackawanna Diner, Madison Diner. Those are some of the places that definitely come to mind.
The Nautilus.
Yeah.
Um, so on a Friday, Saturday night, when you're hanging out with your friends, where would you go?
Um, I had really strict parents, so
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I might have been at a friend's house hanging out, but uh, I remember my grandmother came and was staying with me while my parents were traveling on a vacation. I think they went to Australia for like 3 weeks and left me. And my grandmother asked, "So when's your what time is Jim's curfew?" And my mom looked at her and said, "Where is he going? What do you mean curfew? Right?" Um, so I probably just at a friend's house, or maybe a diner.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're going to the movies, Triple X or community theater?
So back in the day, it was Morris County Mall. That's where I saw Star
Ah,
Wars.
yes,
Yeah,
theaters 1 and 2 there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the bigger shocks when I went back and drove around and was like, "What the heck happened to this? This was." Sorry, I'm throwing things at my cat who's making racket at the door. Um, that like it was Bradley's and all those
Yep.
stores, and then
Yep.
it was Walmart and just it was like a dentist's office. It's weird. I don't even know what
Yeah.
it turned into,
Yeah.
but
So
it
there's a
wasn't
Walmart. The Walmart's still there. They put a Home Goods in there now. But the
okay.
biggest changes are when you go down East Hanover, going towards Morris Plains.
Yeah,
They built a huge um, Menon. The Menon Company is gone. The rink
yeah.
is still there. They put townhouses and condos and a whole shopping center there. And across the
Oh,
street is the brand new ShopRite right there with some other
okay.
stores. That's the biggest change there. Like back in the day, I remember driving toward Morris Plains on Hanover. You would pass the Tetley plant, and you can smell the tea there. And that for years now has been apartment buildings now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
my last question is, what's the biggest thing that you miss about Morristown?
Um, I gotta say, I really miss the food. Pizza. I'm a pizza snob. Um, cannot get decent pizza out in California. I've tried. Like anytime you meet somebody from the East Coast or especially New Jersey, New York area, that's a conversation you're going to have. Is like, hey, have you found any good pizza out here? Um, so there's that, but also it's the culture of the diners and the little mom and pop places, um, and then I guess the bigger thing would be just relationships. There are people. It's funny. I've become friends with a lot of people that I went to school with that I wasn't friends with back then. There's one guy, I won't say his name. Um, but yeah, I remember at Freeling Eisen he would beat me up occasionally, and now I feel like we're friends on on Facebook, and he's a photographer now, so that probably will give it away a little bit.
Is he on the
But
East Coast?
yeah, he's still in the area.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
you
yeah.
need me to
So if
visit
you need
anybody?
a good photographer, let me know. I can amazing headshots, good corporate stuff. Anyhow, but just there's a lot of relationships that I've made and either made or reconnected with that I just haven't. It's over the internet now, and so
Hmm.
there's a lot of relationships that it would be nice. Terry, like you when you come out to the Bay Area, when we get out to a nice restaurant, breaking bread together, it's hard to pass that kind of thing up.
But it
And that's
seems like I have to bring my own bread, though. This is what it sounds like to me.
You do, unless you like sourdough.
no, that's why
Bay
that's
Area is
that's
a one trick pony when it comes to bread.
yeah, that's why the last time I was out there and Jim and I went to a restaurant, it was a Greek restaurant.
Hmm.
That way, at least
Yeah.
accomplished that. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting about. I just want to add to what you said about the relationships. Is the other neat dynamic, and I notice this all the time happening on Facebook. Is if I think any of us said today, well, my brother's already out there, but if you or I, Jim, said, "Hey, we're going to be in town for a couple of days. We want to get together.
Hmm.
Let's meet at X place." You'll probably get a good number of people showing up,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, listen, Jim, we appreciate you taking time and spending an hour with us today. Listen, we hope your story continues, and eventually, we can loop around and get you
Wait,
back
hold on.
on.
That's a little ominous. Do I need to? I need to,
Listen,
to look over my shoulder.
That's a Jersey ending to a podcast. Come
Yeah,
on.
listen,
Yeah.
listen.
I
How
hope
you
you make.
doing?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I hope nobody whacks you tomorrow.
May
Listen,
your sandwiches not disappoint. May your pizza not have pineapple.
that's right. That's right. But listen, we really appreciate you coming on with us and sharing your story with us. And it's a story that is going to be shared with a lot of people now. And if anybody remembers Jim from high school, listen, feel free to reach out. Leave your comments below.
My
Whether
email is jim@berkman.net. So if
well,
anybody wants to ping me,
Jim, we will add that to the bottom
Yeah.
to the description. And whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to this wherever you get your favorite podcast from, we would really love it if you guys can subscribe to the channel now as we get more and more people coming on. We do have a list of people that we will have coming on. Won't be every week. It'll probably be twice a month at most. Because we do have.
I reached out to Jill, and she said she's interested.
Well, let's keep that on the hush hush now, because we don't want to give away too many spoilers here, Jim. But the one I'm just gonna give this one shout out to, and I think going to school in Morristown, I think he got more crap than anything, and to our principal Ernie Smith,
Yes.
this guy
Yes.
was a legend at the end of the day, and God, people. He was so old school, but in retrospect, when you think about back to him, he was he was he was a good principal, you know. And you're talking about you go back about um, with a decade before we had the race riots. I think he was instrumental in bringing people together. I just wanted to give out a shout out to him. I know, rest in peace, Mr. Smith. You were a great guy. But again, Jim, thank you so much. And we look forward to anybody out there who's watching this. If you want to be on if you want to come on and tell your story, feel free to email us. Our information is below. And we'll schedule on. I hope as we do, we appreciate everybody out there. And we all have, like I said earlier, we all have that thread of Morristown, the community that runs through us. So our stories, as different as they are very similar. So on behalf of my brother and myself and Jim, thank you for joining us. This has been Beyond the Green. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.